what Corrine, Leiden University does, what we're doing at CMARC, what is done on some of the other islands, it has to be reconciled with the living populations to make it relevant. We have issues that was mentioned by both of them, treasure hunters, robbery of artifacts, destruction of archaeological sites. So what we have to have is scientific research, community education, and cultural resource management. It needs to serve both the needs of the resident population as well as the professionals. So the approaches to achieve these goals are, of course, varied and very often involve tense confrontations. Grant was just mentioning the developers sometimes are very resentful of protection policies or approaches to archaeological sites. And yet, these goals have grown into an essential function of heritage research. But it's a two-way communication. And that two-way communication is that the professionals share new data and scientific insights that are unfamiliar to the residents, while the residents can share traditional insights. However, that may also include claims to ownership of either objects and or their exhibition formats. Now, public archaeology institutions in the Netherlands Antilles are on 4 of the 5 islands of the Netherlands Antilles. Curaçao started off with the Archaeological Anthropological Institute of the Netherlands Antilles, which was called AINA. It later became the National Archaeological Anthropological Museum called NAM. On St. Eustatius, the St. Eustatius Center for Archaeological Research, CCAR, which was set up by Grant. On Bonaire, the Bonaire Archaeological Institute, Bonaire. On St. Maarten, the St. Maarten Archaeological Center, CMARC. And, as mentioned by Corrine, Saba till now does not have an archaeological facility, although most of the research has been done by Leiden University there. On Curaçao. The first Netherlands Antillean government agency for archaeological research was initiated by Edwin Ayubi in 1968. He helped to establish the Archaeological Anthropological Institute of the Netherlands Antilles, AINA. There's a picture of Eddie there you can see, and some of the first team going to St. Eustatius in 1982 with Norm Barca and myself and Eddie Ayubi. You see some of the early team of the AINA staff, Will Nagelkerk and Rosemary Allen, R. Carla Maduro, myself. And then we were starting early on, from the early 80s, to get professors from Holland to start to come in to cooperate, such as Jalpe Takema, for physical anthropology work early on. The AINA research always involved the local population. With AINA came increased archaeological research on all of the islands. It was primarily conducted by myself and Will Nagelkerken. However, these projects were small-scale projects, but they always involved local workers who were educated for the field work. We would go to the Department of Public Works of the island, get a select group of people that we would train, and then when we came back to the island for later work, we would go back to those same workers. We also focus on extensive local media coverage to highlight the participation of these local workers in the projects. You can see some early work by Leiden University in the Antillen there with Leendert Lauw-Kooijmans in 1985. And as well, AINA was given the authority to monitor international research projects on the island. And at this point, I'd like to mention in 1993, when Leiden University, Minno Hoogland and Corrine Hoffman, myself, André Delpuech, in a French, Netherlands Antilles, Dutch international cooperation project on French side of St. Maarten was conducted. Now, AINA also promoted the intrinsic value of ethnographic objects. Private ethnographic collections were assessed into the AINA collections, and archaeological excavations were focused on locations of interest to the local residents. Now, this is a very subtle point, but very important. A lot of times, scientists will come into an environment and say, you need to research this, this, and this. But the local residents might have another idea about what they want researched. And we need to be very clear and sympathetic towards those needs of the local residents. Rosemary Allen did dynamic work in the cultural anthropology area. Myself, Ellis Juliana, did work with archaeology and ethnography. The link between the researchers and those whose heritage is researched was explained in their own language, and it was made relevant to daily life. The whole point is to take the complexities of scientific research and simplify it into the way that the community felt comfortable with it. Not demeaning the information and not demeaning the value of what was being generated, but communicating in a way that could be received by the community. R.A.I.S then evolved into the NAM, the National Archaeological Anthropological Museum, in 1998. Technically, this was because the government wanted to get rid of R.A.I.S. They wanted to separate it from government, so they had the NAM created as a government-sponsored foundation in order to handle those functions. That was actually the reason. You can see the building here, the current NAM board. Although continuing with some archaeology, once we go into the NAM period, we actually see on Curaçao that it's a focus far more on anthropological studies and some heritage education, but very much a declining interest in archaeological field work and museums work, and an increased focus on collections management efforts. So much so that by 2007, they actually changed their name to the National Archaeological Anthropological Memory Management Foundation. So they've gotten that far away from the archaeological work. The education focus of NAM has reflected respect for the traditional values of the local populations, albeit the vast majority of the research is conducted on Curaçao, so much so that in 2009, this year, the NAM has now become a fully Curaçao government-sponsored foundation, is no longer of the land level. Founded in 2000 on St. Eustatius by Grant Gilmore, the St. Eustatius Center for Archaeological Research is a field school-oriented research station based on the models of Colonial Williamsburg and Museum London program models. You see Grant there. You also see Misha Spanner, who helps with much of the youth programs and museums work on St. Eustatius. The field school participant model that Grant has initiated with the SACAR is actually a very specialized kind of approach to archaeological work, in which you're getting tourism agencies to find persons that are willing to pay the cost to conduct research for an opportunity to participate in that research on St. Eustatius. Participants have variable archaeological experience. The research is properly conducted under the guidance of Grant. However, oftentimes there's minimal local involvement of workers in the field work. On Bonaire, what you see is that in 2003 we established the Bonaire Archaeological Institute, BONAI, and the whole point of the BONAI was to inspire local youth to become much more involved in heritage research. Bonaire has a smaller population and limited resources, and so therefore we had to make necessary adaptations. But the intention of BONAI was youth involvement at all levels of research, from the selection of research sites to the field and lab work, as well as media communication about the research. The local youth are the project core. You can see various excavations and research projects. We reconstructed a 12-meter whale skeleton as part of a biology and project within it. Archaeological excavations at World War II sites, at prehistoric sites, at historic sites. And within it, we are also giving the local youth of Bonaire a voice to communicate to their own community. What the BONAI do is they conduct the research, they collect data for the government, and then they themselves are the ones that communicate the value of that data to their own local community on the island. Now, this method of communicating the information that's generated through heritage research is very intimate. It's very close.